Good afternoon, everyone, and greetings from Brussels. I'm Bruno, a senior fellow with the German Marshall Fund. And thank again to all of you for joining us today and talk about opportunities to push forward global cyber norms and the role that an initiative like the Paris Call for Trust and Security in Cyberspace can play. First things first, let me also thank Microsoft for their partnership in today's events. We're very pleased here at GMF that for nearly 2 years now, actually, GMF and Microsoft have worked together on finding principles and actions that shape responsible state behavior in cyberspace. And while doing this, our programming has sought solutions that also include the voice of multiple stakeholders. And that's because inclusive governance presents interesting options to make cyberspace more stable. It can complement what governments are already doing. And that's exactly what the Paris Call seeks to achieve, and sharing this vision. This is also why in 2018, GMF signed the Paris Call, and we are very pleased to have joined over 1,000 other global signatories to date. So I will leave it to our speakers to elaborate more at length about this topic, but perhaps to end, let me just say that today's event is the outcome, the grand finale of 6 months of programming and research that took us to multiple capitals in Europe. We went virtually, of course, to multiple cities, including Riga, Sofia, The Hague. And in each city, we organized small roundtables with local government officials, business leaders, civil society to hear what their views are and priorities on the Paris Call. So we summarized the outcome of these discussions and our own research in a new paper that was just released last week, making concrete recommendations, looking ahead at the future of the Paris Call. So I would say it will be interesting reading for those that follows the topic, but perhaps also for those that want to learn a bit more about cyberspace governance. There was a link to the paper in your invitation for this event, or we will be happy to share it again here in the chat function. So without much further ado, let me hand over to our moderator today, Nina Hyvärinen, Head of Corporate Relations at F-Secure. I hope I had your family name right. Nina, I'm actually partly excited that you could join us today because F-Secure will also co-chair one of the newly created Paris Call working groups, Group 4 actually, on advancing international cyber norms. So Nina, that makes your participation even more interesting than it already was, and many thanks again for joining. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Bruno, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are, and warmly welcome also on my behalf. Very topical discussion, and we have a very interesting panel today here. So we're going to talk about Paris Call and activating global cyber norms. And I'll give each speaker in the panel floor to them to give some introductory remarks, and then we can go to discussion, and hopefully we get also a lot of questions from the audience. And for the questions, please use the Q&A function in Zoom, and we'll then have them incorporated in our discussion. So please just start shooting the questions to us, makes it more interesting for all of us. So I will first give floor to Līga, who is the Senior Director for EU Governmental Affairs for Cybersecurity and Emerging Threats Policy at Microsoft. But Līga, you also have background in policy making and government side, so you're a very interesting participant then for our discussion. So Līga, what's your take that how can we continue to promote the Paris Call principles and increase trust in cyberspace, and most of all, how can we turn these principles into action? Līga, floor is yours.
Thank you, Nina. Nice to see you, and nice to see you all. Thank you, Bruno, for the report and hosting this event. We're proud to partner with you and with F-Secure and all the other participants. And, you know, it seems that every moment that we have a time to speak on cybersecurity, that this is a timely event. Well, it becomes more timely with more new and interesting things happening in cyberspace. and some things are very positive and some things are quite negative. So I think, we'll have conclusions at the end, but every day is timely in cyberspace. And so that cannot be emphasized enough with the, just looking at March. If we look at what, we're trying to finish up SolarWinds before the next incidents are happening. What's happening with the Microsoft Exchange servers is of course deeply troubling, and all operational staff are working to address those issues as they develop. On a more positive note, the open-ended working group last week at the UN did come to a consensus report, which was certainly not a given. And so these negotiations do show that the multi-stakeholder environment is strong, and the consultations that also happen involving industry and civil society, I think were a great part of that. We have civil society working actively with the new Cyberpeace Institute report outlining how citizens need to, in need of health support across the world, have become victims of cyber attacks. So, recent events, COVID almost seems old in comparison to some of the cyber attacks going on, but still remains an issue as healthcare has gotten much more attention this year. We're also very pleased with that the Paris Call working groups were announced by the French MFA in March. And as Nina and Bruno already mentioned, that Microsoft is working with F-Secure and also with the University of Florence to work on the working group on advancing norms. So congratulations very much to the French MFA for launching these working groups. I think that will be a big factor in how we go forward in the Paris Call, and maybe I'll touch on that a little bit later. But I also wanted to highlight what we think are the excellent points that Bruno identifies in the report that came after many of these roundtables. And I really think that, it's unfortunate that, we can't meet in person, but we have been keeping these roundtables alive throughout COVID, because reaching out and talking to people who initially endorsed the Paris Call is essential. And it's not easy, and it's time intensive, and it takes a lot of work. But without that kind of, individual attention to all the endorsers, that it will lose its momentum. And as new developments happen with the working groups, I think this is a great way to go forward. So Bruno rightly calls for new concrete goals for each of the Paris Call working groups. And I think that will definitely be the case as we go forward. As I said, we're focusing on advancing norms and to see what kind of policy areas need to be addressed, how we can look at different kinds of surveys and workshops and working with endorsers who have interest in this area to build on the advancing norms working group. The report also identifies that the community needs to be diverse. This year it was healthcare that was attacked. What's it going to be next year? Because we don't necessarily we can't anticipate what is going to be the sector this year that is the most vulnerable that we didn't anticipate. So we'll keep looking and thinking how there can be other areas that can be addressed. And you think of how critical the definition of critical infrastructure changes. It's constantly evolving. And, the EU is looking at this through legislation currently, and to see how either digital infrastructures, various areas of manufacturing and water supply, and just different areas may have vulnerabilities that could be the next healthcare that gets attacked is quite important. So reaching out to communities that aren't the obvious suspects is certainly very, very important. And we have gotten more healthcare institutions on board over the last years. And in Bruno's report, or GMF's report, there's certainly identified that we have to engage different levels of multilateralism. I think this is important. We're all, I think, mostly European actors in this space. How do we work together within Europe and reach out to different regions of the world? What makes sense across regions when you work on these things? And I think that the open-ended working group will give us a bit of more of a vehicle and how that progresses over the years to see how we can, build bridges across regions rather than looking at cybersecurity norms from a more regional perspective. I do not want to take up all of our time, but let's just looking ahead a little bit. We're pleased that the Paris Call community continues to evolve, address recent events, the working groups give more opportunities, so that's great. The UN has come to a conclusion on the open-ended working group. While some actors were a bit more ambitious on the program of action that would have included a multi-stakeholder element in a more active way, that door has not been closed. So we look forward to see how the UN will address this and how we can react through the Paris call, matching the ambitions of European governments and governments around the world, and see how we can work on an inclusive and transparent framework. And within, I represent European government affairs for Microsoft, and we're very much looking at how the EU cybersecurity strategy addresses cyber norms and what we can do in this space. And there's been a lack of a European regional approach to multi-stakeholderism, and we'll be having some, I'll leave you on a cliffhanger that we'll have an announcement later on this month on how we are partnering with various stakeholders on cybersecurity to address a multi-stakeholder framework within Europe. So stay tuned and follow Microsoft announcements. Hopefully there'll be some more. And just finally, it would be best. I'm sure that those who are attacking the malicious actors in cyberspace do not want us to cooperate, do want governments to sit in their corner, industry to sit in their corner, and not cooperate and not discuss and not work together. But I think that it's definitely been proven that this kind of cooperation and collaboration is the way to go forward. And Europe has certainly addressed that. The UN has addressed that as the way to go forward. So I'm glad to continue to work on the Paris call and with all the endorsers. And let's keep talking.
Thank you, Līga, and thanks for a nice teaser for all of us to keep following that. What exciting news you have. This is actually a good sort of bridge then to give floor to Paul Zajac, who is the Head of Strategic Affairs and Cybersecurity Department at the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs. And French having, of course, being very much in the core of the Paris Call initiative, it will be very interesting to hear your take on looking at really the implementation and how to advance the Paris Call and the 9 principles. Paul, floor is yours.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for the kind words. And thanks to the German Marshall Fund for organizing this. And I commend you for the role that the German Marshall Fund has been playing in as an active stakeholder of the Paris Call. I think this event is also testimony to your engagement in this. And so thank you all. Thank you, Bruno, for the report that we have, of course, read with much attention at the French MFA. A lot of good ideas in there that really converge with our own thinking and help us a lot. So thanks for that. As Līga said, of course, it's always very topical, but we're indeed at a crossroads. Since we launched the Paris Call at the Paris Peace Forum back in 2018, basically we have seen an increase in the number and the scales of cyber attacks that are being conducted, and now, frankly, have reached again this year, and also in the context of the pandemic, new heights. So we have a cyberspace that is, frankly, more destabilized than ever. So that's the one trend. The other trend is, of course, that meanwhile we are trying to bring all people of goodwill together to work cooperatively to bring some stability in cyberspace. And so you have these two competing trends. I don't know which one will prevail over time, but we'll work and we'll do our best so that in the end, security and stability in cyberspace will prevail. And I think, of course, that the platform or the community we built through the Paris Call is absolutely unique to help us go in that direction. We have a very, very broad sort of base here of cooperation. And now, indeed, the key question that you asked, Nina, is how do we make the rubber hit the road, basically. We have agreed, worked on first principles. We have, I think, the method right in terms of bringing different stakeholders together, the private sector, the NGOs, the governments. And now we have to make it concrete. This is why we indeed launched the working groups, also maintaining that sort of a very cooperative and not institutionalized approach. But we really need to go further. So the 3 of these working groups will continue focusing on, well, how we work better together, basically by expanding the community, by engaging emerging countries. This is a very important topic that Bruno's report highlighted. We need to have more ownership by Asian countries, African countries. This has to be a truly global approach. And so this is something that we definitely want to invest in. We will also continue to try how to work on promoting this multi-stakeholder approach that we've built within the Paris Call at the UN, and have the work on the interface, so to say, between our community in the Paris Call and the UN framework. And then there are 3 other groups that will really focus more on what we need to do. So the first one is about international norms, which has been at the heart really of what the Paris Call is about from the start. Another one will work on the cyber stability index, precisely to allow us to measure progress or degradation in some cases, and see how to have at least a common assessment of what's going on in the cyberspace. And then the last one will focus on building concrete tools, best practices for all members of the community to share and work with. So we definitely want to make progress over the coming year in all these domains to basically go to the implementation phase, if you want, of the Paris Call. And I mentioned the UN. Bruno also made a very good point in his report about engaging different levels of multilateral institutions. We have been working within the OSCE to build confidence building measures, to create confidence building measures within the cyberspace. We have been working within the OECD framework as well to help create recommendations on how to improve the security of products and services to manage vulnerabilities. So this is for us a sort of direct implementation of the principles we have agreed upon within the Paris Call. And at the UN, as Līga mentioned, we reached last week an agreement within the open-ended working group on a report that has an important recommendation in our eyes, which is to launch a program of action within the UN. For now, as you well know, discussions within the UN have been built around the GG and the OEWG, so 2 groups about discussing norms and principles. Now we want to get concrete and go beyond that discussion again, building on all the work that's been done within these 2 groups over the past years, to really again go into the implementation phase through a program of action that will where different stakeholders and different states and participants will be able to share their tools, to share their approach, to really implement those norms and go one step further. So we will be working on this over the next year. And one of our goals, of course, is to sort of nourish the program of action and what we do at the UN with the kind of exchanges and discussions that we have within the Paris Call. And we're trying to see how to build in more of that stakeholder approach within the UN system and within the program of action to really have that interface where we can translate in a way the progress we are and the ideas that come up in the within the community of the Paris Call in the UN framework to really make progress on that front as well. So these are for us the two main lines of actions to follow. The really getting concrete within the working groups of the Paris Call and launching a program of action within the UN in order to really be able to translate what we are doing in the Paris Call community in the UN framework.
Thank you, Paul. That was a really good update for all of us where we are in terms of the work and how you also see it from your side. As Līga said, unfortunately, we can't be all together in the same room, but having this platform now enables us then to reach to the other sides and part of the world. And as Paul was saying, one really important part of the Paris Call is to extend also the reach regionally. So I have very great pleasure then to reach out to African side and invite Teki Akuetteh, who is the founder and executive director for Africa Digital Rights Hub in Ghana to give us her approach and view from African side and also from the NGO side. Teki, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina, and thank you to GMF for inviting us to this. There is no doubt that the principles of the Paris Call is even more relevant now, than it was when it was signed a couple of years ago. And the calls that we have made and are being made through this Paris Call is indeed very important. The call for global norms is indeed extremely important if we are to come together and effectively utilize technology. If there's one thing that we will see throughout all of this is that technology is bringing us all together. Technology is not discriminating between the African and the European, the African, the American, the Chinese. It's bringing us all together. And what we are seeing is that because now technology is bringing us all together, we're actually seeing the cracks. We are seeing the ones that are less protected. We are seeing the vulnerabilities in the ones that are not in the position to effectively protect themselves. We are seeing the weaknesses in the fact that there is a lack of inclusion when it comes to certain parts of the world compared to other parts of the world. And this really strengthens the call for global norms. But at the same time, we have to be very much aware of the fact that the traditional nature by which systems of governance are organized is based on sovereignty of nations, which is very limiting in itself and does not necessarily lend itself to a centralized global norm. And I think that going forward, that is the biggest call for the Paris Call, to come up with a framework that embraces, that brings everyone together, that minimizes the challenge. And I think that, we must give kudos to the call because, of course, it's one of the instruments that have effectively looked at engaging all the critical stakeholders, and including as many people from various parts of the world as possible. So we must give kudos to that. But that in itself presents an extremely difficult global challenge, which is that how do we come up with this centralized set of norms, and how do we think and how do we bring everybody together to speak with one voice on these issues, because it is affecting all of us in the same manner and way. And for me, the solution really lies in thinking outside the box. because the future of technology that we are looking at is none like we have seen in the past. As I mentioned from the beginning, technology is affecting the African in the same way that it is affecting the European, it's affecting the American, it's affecting the Asian. So the question is, how do we take on board the concerns of all of us and then put it together to ensure that no one is really left behind? And that is why the global norms are important. But we will definitely face challenges as we've already been facing, because there are different systems of government, different parts of the world operate differently. When it comes to the financial capacities, we're all very different, and we have very different strengths, for instance, when it comes to effectively protecting systems. And that is why looking at a multi-stakeholder approach, I believe for communities such as mine, like the African, will be extremely useful, because if industry is to adopt a global norm or standard that protects everybody the same, then I know that people within my community, irrespective of the stage of development that our respective countries are in, are respected, and their rights are equally acknowledged and protected. So the need for, you know, the all stakeholders, especially industry, to be part of this process is extremely important for me, because I believe that that will help our communities, in as much as usually our governments are lacking behind and they have several other challenges to deal with. If we have some set of norms that guide industry, invariably we are consuming a lot of technology already. And so if there's a standardized form that guarantees adequate level of protection, or a certain minimal level of protection, where we know that, you know, Africans will be adequately protected irrespective of where they are coming from in the world, that will present, you know, a very satisfying view for us all. And I think that will bring a lot of inclusion into the situation. Another challenge that I have seen in this space is that, look, calling for cybersecurity, there's a lot of awareness that has to go into this. And so the role of the NGO currently within our continent in helping with this awareness, in raising this awareness, is critical. So bringing on board the civil society organizations, the non-governmental organizations, especially within developing or emerging economies, is going to be extremely critical to the awareness creation drive that we need to. You know, as they say when it comes to security, is the people first, the processes, and the technology. So we cannot do all of these without bringing the people on board. And I think the best way to channel or bring the people on board is through the non-governmental organizations as well.
Thank you, Teki. A lot of food for thought for all of us, and to continue our discussions. Last but definitely not least, we will then reach out to another part of the world, to Brazil. And good morning, Fabio Stable, who is our Executive Director for Institute for Technology Society of Rio de Janeiro, but you're also a Berkman Klein Center affiliate at Harvard University. So how does all this sound to you, and what is your take on when looking at the Paris call and how really to implement the principles? What do you think, Fabio?
Nina, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for the report. Thank you for the debate. I'll give one sentence that will guide what I will say. The Paris call is urgently needed. Will it work? I'm not sure, and that's okay. So internet governance is chaotic. The complexity of issues that we have to solve are way beyond our capacity of governance, of how we put institutions, people to work together. I'll give one example based in Brazil. So we have the Brazilian Internet Bill of Rights. Around 2007, we start to have a multi-stakeholder open debate on the internet on topics such as net neutrality, responsibilities of intermediaries, and so on. Topics that come to norms and to international debate later were already law in Brazil around 2014. And this is based on a multi-stakeholder approach. So we love the multi-stakeholder approach, but how to do it? And what we see now, from 2014 to now, what we see that basically every aspect of government has internet on it. We even don't use the E something because it doesn't make sense. Health debate, how about internet? Mining, internet, and so on. So it's a very complex system. And then what I think the reports put some lights on in a good way is that it seems like the UN around 2013 decided that they need to innovate in governance systems. And the Paris Call is something that aids what the UN cannot do, but also aids to the things that go beyond. I think the principle 8 for me is a good example of the UN cannot do. I will read principle 8, which is no private hackback. This is a principle that is hugely important for everyone. But usually when you think about the government and regulations of government, you think the society against the state, limiting the state actions. And no private hacks about one stakeholder talking to its own partners and saying, look, let's agree rules with it. And so I think it's greatly important, the Paris Call. Why I say that I don't know if it works and why I think this is okay, because it's a hugely complex system. So another thing the reports puts lights on is the stages of the Paris calls. So we have now information sharing, we have to get new partners, and this is hugely important. But what we learned, for example, from the Open Government Partnership, which is another way of innovation, it's really interesting, is that you will start with a positive agenda, and then people start to make criticism that someone is not behaving well. So the compliance of the principles, if you are abiding the rules. OGP had success in attracting governments that are defined as non-democratic or at least non-Western democracies and so on. 80 countries are that. And then what happens when these countries start to enact things that are against the principles? And then becomes a criticism. Aside from the criticism, that there is the positive agenda that without the LGP, there will never be an open data agenda, an open government agenda in certain contexts. So I think the Paris Call, it's a positive agenda. It's a complementary governance systems. It's experimental because we need experiments in this. And I think it's learning fast. And to conclude, I think that the role of civil society is to engage in it. It's big and significant enough for us to kind of be part of it. It's not simple because limited resources, a very complex systems, language, everything it's against. But I think Brazil, for example, have set many institutions that are signatories of the Paris Call. ITS, for example, is from the start. But I think it's a great place to find inspiration. It's a great place to think about internet governance and cyber norms.
Thank you to all of you, and I think very refreshing remarks and also something for us to discuss further. I will actually start our discussion to referring to a question that we got already before the event, and something that all of you also already touched upon, which is the kind of the UN process and the multilateralism for Paris Call. We have from Dr. Wolfgang Pape, apologies if I'm mispronouncing the names already. It's always difficult, but knowing with Hyvärinen, it's not always easy to know how to pronounce these international names. But he had a very pertinent question about these processes. He's asking that, can the only nation-based Westphalian multilateralism properly deal with global norms that concern all stakeholders, kind of like omnibus? And hence, should it not be governed rather omnilaterally? So what is your take on this, like looking at the UN process and something that we all kind of see and could maybe say that it's kind of this cumbersome conference diplomacy when looking at and when developing international norms? What do you think? How could Paris Call kind of be more part of the solution than bringing other elements to the UN processes? Līga, do you wanna go first?
If nobody else is jumping to take the floor, I'm happy to comment. I think, you know, for many years we've gotten the question: why is industry, why is Microsoft involved in issues that the governments should only be dealing with? You know, this is a question that we constantly get asked, and you know, to be fair, much less than before. But since Microsoft has been involved in this space for quite a few years now on kind of the norms development and more on state responsibility in cyberspace, I think it's become clear that, you know, since the beginning of our efforts on looking at more state responsibility, more industry involvement, more involvement of civil society, it's been specifically because the WannaCries, the NotPetya, are coming more frequently, and they're attacking through our own products and services. And this is relatively clear that we are not only the first responders, but we have to be acting together before these attacks take place. So if if you leave it to governments only, then you could have the situation that happened in 2017 at the UNGGE, when you just can't agree among governments on what is state responsible behavior. The, you know, last week's open-ended working group was kind of a step ahead and very positive on the side of governments, but it's also being inclusive. It's being transparent in these discussions and looking to see where your resources are to solve the problems and to implement norms. It's not a government-only issue, and it's clear that to try to involve all the stakeholders is only one way to go ahead. I think Teki addressed, you know, looking at the situation from Africa. Every country, every region, every locality has a different approach that can work. There is not one universal approach. So looking at how we can combine stakeholders in different situations is certainly, I think, the most effective way forward.
I think that UN had to answer a similar question when they started. Why do you need a multilateral agency if governments can make agreements among themselves? And now that we have UN, it becomes clear that without UN, you cannot solve certain problems. It seems to me that one of the things that Paris Call can do is timely answer. They are just quicker, faster ways to connect stakeholders, find solutions, approach consensus, and so on. So it's not a replacement, but I think they solve a problem that today cannot be solved. Is this the only solution? No. Is this the best solution? I don't know the answer, so I don't know which one is the best, but it does work and it can work. And the status quo is not working. So it's strange to ask private sector to be part of a coalition because we used to have governments being part of the coalitions. We have several constitutional readings to say how this can be dangerous and how can this be not the way we do. But it seems if you look to mining, if you look to telecommunication, if you look to other areas where ITU has expertise, private sectors does have a key role. ITU, I think, is a clear example of that. So the Paris Call is just, it's a new idea. I think it's a good idea and it works. And this is why I think we should try and bet on it.
Paul, did you want to also jump into this?
Yes, thank you, because I think this question goes to my heart as a professional diplomat, and I must say this is exactly the kind of question we ask ourselves when we come to these issues, and this thinking is exactly the kind of thinking that is behind our engagement within the Paris Call. We actually thought about how to, you know, what kind of diplomacy we need today to tackle such global issues as climate change on one side, which I'm not dealing with, and cybersecurity. And there was a very deliberate thinking within the French MFA at the time, especially after the negotiation of the Paris Agreement on climate change, because we experimented then with a new sort of way to practice diplomacy by involving a much more diverse group of actors in the negotiation, which worked out pretty well, although it was not an easy task. But we thought, okay, this is probably a new template for the way to practice diplomacy, especially when we have to tackle issues that really go beyond the reach of governments, however powerful they may be. And so we need to sort of replicate this approach when we need. And of course, cybersecurity and stability in the cyberspace was an obvious one, which is the reason why we partnered with Microsoft to launch Paris Call and continue to work on this. And which doesn't mean that the UN system isn't relevant. Of course, it remains fully relevant, but we have to really strengthen the two approaches and that go together in our view in terms of developing ideas and bringing more people together, but also at the same time, in the end, getting concrete into negotiations within the existing UN frameworks. So these are complementary in our views.
Very, very important points and good insights. And this is also something that Bruno in his excellent report also referred to this inclusive and expertise-driven policy development. And this is something that I've been also thinking a lot, is that how we really make this public-private cooperation to work in practice. And I think Paris Call is one of the really good examples where you actually bring different stakeholders together. We actually had a very good question from the audience when we talk about this work and inclusiveness, is also to kind of refer to that when we have these Paris Call working groups. It is from question from Laura Rozentāle, that when we look at the working closely with the different stakeholders, but how do the working groups intend to include underrepresented groups such as youth, women, and ethnic minorities, groups that particularly suffer from harmful digital activities? And I think this is a good question to all of us, and also us as chairs of those working groups, that how do we make them even more inclusive? Like really, as Teki was saying, like bringing the African approach and understanding, bringing NGOs, but really bringing also different groups, that it's not only kind of different stakeholders on kind of a general level, but really to dig even deeper. Do you have any thoughts and ideas how we could actually do this also better? I think Fabro was first and then Līga.
I can try, I'll be really brief. I think interoperability, it's a keyword that works really well for systems, but we don't apply it to governance. So if you want to bring civil society in, we need to make a governance system that apply the interoperability principles. I'm not talking about competencies, but I'm talking about governance tasks, sharing agendas, sharing documents, putting people together, connecting other hubs that civil society participate. The regional approach is good. There are some networks that are good. Access Now, for example, is a good example that brings debate around it. But I think we need innovation on how we make governance methods able to interoperate. Without that, it's just too costly to follow everything. And I see no one innovating on that. And I think Paris Call has this kind of mentality and approach to innovate, to make the process more interoperable.
Līga, did you want to also comment?
I think, sure. I think it's an interesting question to think about how to include underrepresented groups within the Paris Call, because quite honestly, we have difficulty in including highly representative groups in the Paris Call. To be honest, you know, it's a stretch to get people active on cybersecurity and on something as abstract as building norms. You know, we can always go forward and, you know, sort of show by our own leadership. I mean, Microsoft diversity and inclusiveness is highly ingrained in our corporate culture. So that's one. You know, we, Nina and I both work together in the Women for Cyber and see how we could work on the Paris Call in that format. So that's a bit of an easy box to tick. You know, it's something that we can think about more, but I think that this is a lot on how we engage civil society as a whole and how we think of initiatives that aren't just involving companies or even large NGOs. How does it trickle down to the individual? How do you get the individual interested in these things? In, you know, I speak from the European perspective because for me, it's easy to identify how European institutions address citizen initiatives. You know, we have the Digital Peace Now campaign within Microsoft as well that really tries to target how we address cybersecurity as a concern of the individual. It has a lot of attention. It's, you know, COVID has slowed us down in many ways, but we try to focus on the way, on how we can involve individuals in these campaigns to make it more clear to them, because sometimes even a big cyber attack, you think, oh, it's not me, my data's not important, you know, nobody's interested in what I'm doing online. Well, we have to work on that awareness constantly. So whether it's through the Paris call or through addressing why legislation is important to the individual, or why in this region some care and some don't. And, you know, it's always, how do you link norms to more maybe basic issues such as connectivity? And finding, you know, which groups need that connectivity. And as you get connectivity in place, how do you address also norms on top of that? So it's not an easy question, but it's a good one to ask and to keep addressing as we go forward on looking at norms.
Thank you, Līga. Hey, now that you've been listening to each other, is there anything that you'd like to sort of raise from each other's points? We do have questions also from the audience, but is there anything that you've been sort of wanting to ask from each other, like using this opportunity also to see and have questions to other panelists? If not, then, oh, Līga, you go. Yes, go ahead.
I don't know where the hand raise is. I wanted to ask Paul, what does he think? Can he predict the future on the program of action? And, you know, Europe was very much behind the program of action, but it didn't get as much attention as maybe was desired in the report. How is that looking going forward? Are there some thoughts already in place on how to attach it to the next open-ended working group or independently in some way? I would love to hear a bit more perspectives on that and how you'll bring the Paris call into that process from the government side.
Thank you. Yes, so the program of action for those who have not heard of it is a French proposal, now backed indeed by actually 49 states now, which aims at implementing within the UN system the norms and the principles that have been discussed and agreed upon over the past years within the two group of experts that are seized of the matter and that have been working and negotiating on this matter over the years. The idea behind it is basically to again get concrete and put the norms into practice. For us, the aim is really to go one step beyond what has been done so far within the UN. And also to sort of overcome the polarization of the debates within the UN between, let's say, Russia and China on the one side and the United States on the other side, and offer a way forward that can bring everybody together, because it really goes beyond the sort of abstract debates that sometimes become a little bit ideological, and therefore, you know, don't allow for much consensus and progress. So we want to go beyond this sort of fault lines and overcome them by having a more concrete discussion and work within that new framework. And so I think we have received a support from the open-ended working group. I want to highlight that the aim is really to go beyond the two groups, so it won't be subordinated to any existing framework. Would be a standalone framework to work together on the implementation of the principles. And we will work on continuing to expand the support for this initiative, especially when it comes to countries from Asia or from Africa. We already mentioned this for the Paris Call. I think this is also an important matter for us when it comes to the POA, and the two go together. And of course, we will want to replicate or include the multi-stakeholder approach that we have developed within together within the Paris Call, also within the program of action. We have to see exactly how that can work within the UN system, but definitely we want to see, for instance, if we can create some observer status for non-states actors that could provide their views, and how to create an interface, especially with the kind of discussions and work we are doing within the Paris Call. So this is the idea behind it.
Thank you, Paul. That was useful. Another thing that we've been sort of discussing and touching upon is sort of like really how to extend the reach and how to make these, as Līga nicely put it, like abstract cyber norms, something that also different like businesses, NGOs, organizations feel that are relevant. So what is your take? How can we actually make this like sort of like, especially when thinking about like SMEs and NGOs, for them to understand and see that, okay, why is this relevant? Why does this matter? Why should we get engaged? And in Bruno's report, there was an interesting proposal, kind of proposing a Paris Call liaison hub, like having that one place where we would bring information and kind of having one place to go when they see something. Like now there's in news, they're talking about this kind of threat. What should we do as organizations, like to have that one place to go, like one stop shop? What do you think of these sort of challenges vis-a-vis other like smaller actors, players, and also to having this place where we'd actually pool information and have that kind of place for organizations to go? Is this something that could work, or is there a need for such thing? Like, Fabre, do you want to give your thoughts?
Yes, I think I'll give one example here, which is Australia 2020-2021. So Australia has played a very active role in defining cyber norms, like the tax link, for example, is one of the innovations that they fight for and promote. The impact of the tax link in disinformation, in cyber norms in other countries is unknown. Is something we have to understand and if it works. So you have one country that will promote debates elsewhere, and we have this exportation of norms. Data protection law is the same principle with 10 years tracking records on that. So what I think about is one stop place to go is that these topics, they move too fast and too quickly. And then it's very hard for the UN approach to provide information that will be shared with civil society, shared with external actors. From all the expertise I have in participating in ITU debates, they are very high level. It takes a lot of resources, people, investments to follow this up. So this information sharing role played by the Paris Call is one opportunity or one need we have to kind of be able to tackle problems at the speed they appear. And Australia is one of the examples that is this ripple effect of Australia. We have to understand, and I don't think we'll come from the UN forum, but this is where we would debate. So I think there is opportunity for that. How small organizations, how NGOs engage with that? I think the answer is opt-in. So the Paris Call, if it's something that is mandatory, that you have to participate, I don't think it will work. But it's an opt-in systems, and then we see more countries, more organizations joining. And they're joining because they have a benefit. They win something with that. And one of the things they have is information sharing. It's in the early stages still, but it will become something larger. So I think it's something that has been working and can work in this regard.
Thank you, Fabro. Teki, what kind of thought do you have when listening to these discussions and also looking at really from the African side that what are the challenges and how can the Paris Call community really support and bring that perspective and those challenges? How do you see this?
Yes, I completely agree with Fabro that the Paris Call community brings a different dynamic to the discourse from a less bureaucratic process, in that the technology, as always, is running faster, a lot of the time much faster than the legislative norms and other processes that we go through, which even in itself, from the UN level, if it has to be translated into the various communities, takes a lot longer. And you can just imagine the bureaucratic processes for developing countries and compare it to the developed world. It means that when it comes to communities such as ours, it's going to take an even much longer time to actually achieve some of the things that needs to be done right there and then. And so for me, the Paris Call and the community and the idea of a hub creates a system where you can bring issues to and find a way of addressing those issues outside of the concrete, strict, call it straitjacket approach to dealing with some of these issues. So it gives you, call it a win-win situation. And I completely agree with Fabro. It's not, it shouldn't be something that is going to be forced on people, right? But the system itself should speak for itself. It should create a system where it is very easy to address issues, so that it is very easy where maybe African governments feel that they are not getting their voice heard by the technology corporations, or they are not getting their voice heard through other governments or other developed communities, can come here and tell industry that these are the kind of things we have faced within our community. These are the kind of challenges our people are facing. What can we do to solve those kind of problems? And so that avenue is always there. And I think that is why for us, it was very critical to join, because in all of these issues, when it comes to technology, I've realized that, bringing every stakeholder around the table to solve the problems is much easier than using a very strict form of system or governance to, crack a whip. A lot of the time, what tends to happen when you're using other very strict legislative processes are that, you're not understanding the various viewpoints from which people are coming, and we come with very already sealed idea about what we want to do, which limits the ability to compromise and take decisions. And so that's why I think that a community such as this, creating a hub, which can become a good testing ground for ideas. It can become a good place to hear other views and to take them into consideration even before problems arise, is really a way that needs to continue. And it's going to be more and more relevant, because technology is going to continue to be far more advanced than a lot of these traditional systems that we have.
Thank you, Teki. Valuable points. Now that when we start looking at that, it was also mentioned, and Līga also referred to this, but also in Bruno's report. And now when we look at this Paris call and these 6 working groups, and the call that all the working groups should really have concrete goals and objectives, to have something very concrete out, and hopefully we all will then be able to report our conclusions in the Paris Peace Forum in November, hopefully in person already then. Are there any sort of advice that you could give to us, to me, and also Līga, who are part of these working groups, like, and also of course Līga, if you have ideas that how we can actually make that we actually come up with something concrete, something tangible, something that makes these abstract norms concrete. And of course to hear from Paul that what are sort of your ambitions also from the French MFA side for our work. Līga, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think that, you know, when you're looking at such a broad topic, it's very, you know, tempting to try to propose a very large or very wide sweeping initiative. But if you look at the smaller roundtables that we have that led up to this report, it's actually the very small and detailed proposals that can go a long way. For instance, we were both in this Estonian-Finnish roundtable early on in last spring. And one of the proposals was that the, maybe you'll have to remind me, the Finnish IT Security Association proposed that they would get together their members and have a declaration on attacks against healthcare institutions in Finland. And that's one small thing, but it still is an example of how industry is expressing its approach to a particular norm. And there's small steps, but those are sometimes the ones that are easiest to achieve, get more attention, and have impact. And it's not solving, it's not going to, you know, stop all the cyber attacks in the world, or in the chat, I'm trying to read as many of the provocative questions there. It's not going to solve, you know, all governments declaring that they will not launch cyber attacks, but it's one step. And we should not be afraid of the small steps along the way as well.
That was like a very good point, and really important for all of us also to keep in mind that not to try to reach something that is like feels like too big or just too challenging or too complex, but choose something that actually makes a difference and has an impact, even if it sort of is more narrow and maybe comes from one angle, but something really for us to keep in mind. And great encouragement. So thank you, Līga. Paul.
Yeah, if I may jump in on the issue. Well, first, of course, the very idea of the Paris Call is also that the stakeholders are also responsible for, you know, actually implementing the principles and the norms we define together. So it's really they also have, each of us in a way in our daily practices have to really do what we can to in our own behavior to abide by those norms and to promote them and to strengthen them. So it's built in a way, the framework of the Paris Call, the implementation is built in the way we work together. However, I wanted to highlight maybe one or two issues that we think are really in the same vein and the same spirit that Līga highlighted. You know, what we can do in sort of very specific domains. I already mentioned the work on confidence building measures on cyber within the OSCE. So this is one topic that we might want to carry forward. Another is creating recommendations on improving the security of products and services that can be shared as sort of best practices. And more generally, of course, we are only able to abide by the norms we establish and also implement them and have them respected if we have the ability to do so, the capabilities. And so the key issue, as I view it now, is more and more to raise the level of cyber capability worldwide, in every country, so that also on the government side, countries are equipped to deal with the cybersecurity challenges they face, that they have the proper institutions and the proper competence to stabilize and do what governments have to do in terms of due diligence, in terms of countering the malicious use of cyberspace at their level. So for me, it's true both relates to what we can do as a nation and within the European Union, really enhancing our capability and enhancing the capability, cyber capability of our partners would be key to actually putting us in a position to have these norms really implemented and respected.
Thank you, Paul. Fabro, you had some thoughts here as well, please.
Yes, I was here answering some of the questions that people placed, and it gave me some thoughts. So I'll share maybe what do you expect from the Paris call? And maybe it's required that we reduce expectations. So some of the questions that are in chat: how do we make private sector compliant when they don't want to be? How do we make governments to comply with norms if elsewhere they don't? And I don't know the answers for that. Or another one was how to make deliberative systems in places like Paris call. So maybe you'll be some Pollyanna, maybe you'll be kind of like the half full cup. But here are some of the things that I think are innovations that are coming to the debate and we're thinking about. One of them is this information sharing role. This is not sexy because we have heard this everywhere. But I think if you put multi-stakeholder, if you put speed, if you put money, if you put some innovations in RegTech, regulatory technologies, and so on, maybe we can have a better chance to understand the issues. 5G, for example, is one example. We have very short periods of time to define 5G, especially when countries start to react. And then you have Finland, UK, Japan, US, not Brazil. Maybe this information sharing, it's a huge takeaway that Paris Call can help to understand the issue. But it doesn't work with how decisions are made, how governments are accountable, how companies are accountable. My experience in participating on the forums where private sector is very active is that a private sector has lots of disagreements among themselves, so they do have a role to take. 5G is an example. Chinese companies will take a hardly different approach from American countries, from European countries, and so this intra-stakeholder governance, it's really complex. And sometimes the answer they have is no saying. Usually they avoid to participate and engage because there's no consensus. So I think the Paris Call will bring another opportunity for this stakeholder to approach itself. Maybe this is not the most sexy output that we can have from Paris Call. Maybe we have too high expectations, but maybe with low expectations, there's innovation delivery that is very good.
Līga, you wanted to jump in, and
Yeah, I wanted to jump in because I don't agree with Fabro on some of his statements that he makes. And so I'll take the opportunity to mention my disagreement that companies don't want to be compliant. I think that's a very false statement. And if in your experience, the private sector does not want to be compliant, then it certainly does not speak for all private sector. But one thing I will bring out from your comments is something maybe a little bit more positive. It's that it's much more important, I would say, in today's environment to address these issues to build trust with your customers. Yeah. And you know, it's, if you compare it to the same as climate issues, you know, I would say that customers want a company that addresses green technology, that focuses on climate change. I think it's very much the same in the area of privacy and cybersecurity. You need a company that commits to responsible behavior, commits to responsible technology. And I think that, you know, I don't speak for all of industry, but that's certainly the way of Microsoft, and how we go about doing that has to, you know, it goes back to going back to the multi-stakeholder environment to see what the concerns are of citizens when you're building products, what are the concerns of our governments. How do you work with governments so that they don't misuse technology that you've made for a different purpose? You know, all of these things, you know, it stretches far more into AI and the way the data is used and so forth, which is also addressed in the chat, but I won't go into detail now on that. But it's it's a part of building your business and building. I think that companies simply cannot afford not to care about these issues anymore. And while that's certainly the case with large tech companies such as mine, it's slowly going in the way of smaller and medium enterprises as well, that they're all part of the supply chain in some way. And so that's building that trust and devotion to having your products have that angle of cybersecurity that's going to protect your customers is very important. And it's a commodity and it has to be packaged in. So we certainly are interested in being compliant in every way.
Thank you, Līga. And looking at our chat, it seems that Fabro is also agreeing with you. So
100%.
Very good. Hey, we are getting to the end of our time, just that when the discussion is really getting more heated. So it's always a pity. Unless Līga and Fabro have any final remarks, I would like to ask if Paul and Teki have anything that you'd like to still mention very briefly.
Yeah, I would just say that this is we're on the right path for the Paris Call. As has been proposed, we need to look at these norms, but the working group should be looking at concrete things that will become more relevant to the communities that it is speaking for. And I think that, you know, that is what will bring more people to the table. There's been a lot of talk shop around a lot of these issues. So moving away from the talk shop to coming up with concrete things. In the case of my space, which is Africa, you want to look at, you know, going up with standards or tools that can be easily implementable by innovators and developers in the space, and how the larger tech corporations can support some of these communities come up with systems that respect these norms. These are all things that I think we will be able to birth out of the Paris Call, and it will bring out relevant things that will be very beneficial to communities as well. And I must say that for me, the space we're in is a space where it is always the first tool to go to is self-implementation. You know, self-regulation is always the best tool. And I think that this framework creates a system where you can come and adopt processes and procedures that can easily be implemented and will make you a good call without necessarily waiting for some government to hammer on your head some laws, you know. And I agree with Līga. I've always said that, look, without people, technology will not be booming or growing as it is. And so it will be a big mistake for the technology companies to ignore the calls and the concerns of the ordinary person.
Thank you, Teki. Paul, 30 seconds if you have anything final before we have to close.
Thank you. Thank you, Tika. I think you made a number of important points there that I share, including the view that basically the Paris Call has to really evolve towards a platform also for enabling concrete cooperations between its members in terms of sharing best practices, developing common tools, and enhancing our respective capabilities. So really to go beyond the discussion on norms and first principles and towards a platform for cooperation, and through including the Bruno's idea of having a hub for information sharing. We will see how best to go ahead with these ideas. But I think this discussion, and thank you again for hosting this, has allowed us to have to hear a lot of new ideas to really go ahead and go forward and make progress in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And of course, Paris Call is an open process. So if there are anybody in the audience that you'd like to join, please just join as a supporter. And the working groups are open, so you are just more than welcome to join all of the 6 working groups. All the information is on the Paris Call website. And I want to really warmly thank all our panelists. This has been a very lively, interesting discussion. Of course, big thanks to German Marshall Fund and to Bruno and Microsoft, to Līga for facilitating and enabling this discussion. Thank you very much. I think we can end here unless Bruno wants to say anything. But thank you.
I just want to thank you. I thought it was very interesting and I learned a lot as well. So merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Looking forward to continue our discussions around the Paris call. Thank you, everybody.
Merci, au revoir.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.